Hello YouTubers, Tony Sparrow here for the official Ed Warren channel. I'm in the passageway of the Warren's home leading to the museum. I wanted to show you this because a lot of people never see this. This is actually the passageway, partly underground, partly above ground, that leads to the Warren's Occult Museum. If you look over here, this door here, that's the door that leads into what Ed used to call the Halloween room. But what I want to show you in the passageway is pretty interesting because on the walls are some of Ed's paintings. And I want to point some out to you right now. There's one painting that Ed did. And I want to show you one that was in the Conjuring movie. The actual painting from the Conjuring 1 movie. It's right here. When Ed first walks in to the museum in The Conjuring 1, you'll see this painting that Ed had drawn many years ago, I believe in the early 70s. And it's a castle. He calls it Colzian Castle, I believe. So maybe we can look that up and find out more about it. Then as we venture down this way, there's another one of the White Lady of Union Cemetery. Even though she's black in color, he used to tell me that this was his representation of the lady in the Union Cemetery. And he also has a white rendition too. And of course there was his name right there. Warren, it looks like 67 or 69. Here's something else he drew up. The Haunted by Ed Warren. It says, "Rest in peace," and under that it says, "Moonlight, Graveyards, Ghosts." And under that it says Borley Church in England. Anybody's familiar with Borley Rectory and Borley Church, you can look it up. It's in Sudbury section of England, southern part of England a little bit. One of the most haunted places in England. And this is just a head that somebody had given Ed that flashes. Over here's another painting that Ed drew many, many years ago. And as we walk through, you can see another one, a rendition of a ghost flitting through property of a barnyard, or a barn, and haunted house. Here's another one right here that Ed did. Can't see the year on this one, I don't think, but a lot of these were done in the 70s. This here, though, ladies and gentlemen, is the rendition that Ed did of the Ocean-born Mary House in Henniker, New Hampshire. Now, some of you are familiar with the Ocean-born Mary House. This is the first home that Lorraine was really tuned into her clairvoyance when she went and knocked on the door of this house that she heard about through Ed. And the story is, I'll tell you the story. Ed was fresh out of the Navy, and he bought a 1933 Chevrolet Master Eagle sedan for $15. And he went to art school for a couple of years in New Haven, Connecticut. And he came home one day and he told Lorraine, he says, "You know what, Lorraine? I quit art school." She said, "What do you mean you quit art school?" He said, I can paint better than those instructors. We're going to make lots of money." So Lorraine went along with it. Ed started to paint renditions of hauntings, of New England scenes on pieces of barnwood. And he'd call them barnwood paintings. And he opened a studio, in fact, which is now the Occult Museum. And he called that studio the Barn Door Studio. And he would take these little pieces of wood and bigger pieces of barnwood and paint on them. So what he did was, he used to drive up to these tourist areas up in New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and he'd park that 33 Chevy, get out of it, put up his easels, and show his paintings. And I said to Ed one day, I said, "Ed, did you really make any money doing this?" He laughed. He said, "Oh yeah, I made an exorbitant amount of money." And I said, "Well, how much did you make, Ed?" I'm just going to scan around so it doesn't get too boring for you here. I said, "How much did you make, Ed, on these paintings?" He said, "Oh, I made a lot of money." I said, "Well, like what?" He said, "Well, sometimes I make $4 or $5. I started to laugh. And he looked at me, he said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, $4 or $5 for a painting? He said, "Look, this is in the early 50s, 52, 53. He said, I used to rent a cabin up in Vermont with Lorraine for $1 a night. He said a hot dog used to cost 10 cents and gas was 18 cents a gallon. He said, so if I sold 4 or 5 paintings at $25 in my pocket, I was bucks up. And he was right. Anyway, the Ocean-Born Mary house. The story is that there was a pirate attack at sea, and one of the women on the ship that was attacked by the pirates, she was pregnant. And the captain of the pirate ship, when he boarded, said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll spare everybody on board if that woman, when she has her baby, names it after my mother. My mother's name is Mary. And that's what she did. She named her baby after the pirate's mother, named Mary. And then she moved into this home, Mary, when she grew up. And it's said that she haunts it. As you can see here, the well looks like something going into a well, and a carriage that sometimes was seen pulling up, a ghostly image of a carriage. But when Lorraine knocked on the door and spoke to Mr. Roy, who was the caretaker of the house, there was no electricity, there was no heat in the house. This is where Lorraine Warren had her first out-of-the-body experience in her early 20s. And it's kind of funny because when Ed was talking to Mr. Roy about the house, because he wanted to know all about the haunting, Mr. Roy started to go into his conversation. Lorraine was sitting behind Ed. And as he's talking to Mr. Roy, he says something, Ed says something to Lorraine. Lorraine doesn't respond. She looks like she's in some kind of a trance. Ed's snapping his fingers at her. Lorraine, I'm talking to you. She doesn't respond. So Ed, being young, of course, looks over at Mr. Roy and says, what's wrong with my wife? She's not responding. And Mr. Roy says, oh, that happens to clairvoyants a lot in this house. Ed looks at Mr. Roy and says, clairvoyant? My wife's not clairvoyant. She's my wife. And that was funny because Lorraine was in a trance and she had left her body. She had an out-of-the-body experience, and she related later that she could see Ed and Mr. Roy. She was hovering up towards the ceiling, and she looked down and she could see herself, Mr. Roy, and Ed, and the couple that came with Ed and Lorraine, Jerry and his girlfriend. And that is the story of the first time that Lorraine had an out-of-the-body experience. And at that time, remember, Ed didn't even know what the word clairvoyant meant. Here's another rendition of a painting here that Ed did. I'll stay on it for a few seconds. And another one with a wolf or a dog. Ed loved wolves. He loved dogs, wolves. He loved all animals, and so did Lorraine. And up here, if you look, he hand-painted up here, look. The dog that returned from the grave. And over here, it says poisoned house. Don't ask me what that really means, but a poisoned house. Over here, another painting by Ed that he did. Ed loved to do these barn door paintings. See that the clasps, those metal clasps, those are painted on. They're not real clasps. And then there's some spooky little objects here that Ed had. Another rendition here of a painting. Castle. Of a castle up here. It says Skirn Castle, I believe. Skirn. This is how you Skrine. I'm not sure how you say that. And then there's another rendition of a painting here, and up above that, all it says is Haunted Barn. That's all it says. Nice picture of a lion head. Another picture of another painting that Ed did of, actually, I believe that if you guys ever get the book Deliver Us from Evil by Mr. Sawyer, it's all about Ed and Lorraine's cases in the early years, 1971, I believe. Either this is the cover or it's inside the book, this rendition right here of this painting. And this one says Mako, North Carolina. Don't ask me why, but it says Mako, North Carolina. I don't know why he wrote that. Probably maybe the name of a town. Another one here of Ed did. Nice painting. Spooky, nice and spooky. And I got another one here. This says Haunted House Stratford now. If that's what I'm thinking about, it's the Phelps Mansion, or just a haunted house in Stratford, Connecticut, because up here it says Haunted House of Stratford. So ladies and gentlemen, that's basically the Haunted Passageway of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and here it is. So I wish you'd hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. so I can come up with more intriguing videos for you. Till next time, Tony Spera. See you later.